بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله عز وجل وخير هدي رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We're not using the sound system, so anyone of sisters who cares to join us, we're asking that they come down so that this way, inshallah, sound is not affecting anyone everywhere else, inshallah. So anyone who's going to join us, the sisters, come down. Brothers, we ask that you move forward, gather closer. If you need chairs, inshallah, to make yourself comfortable, please go ahead and do so. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and continue, inshallah. Please. So today, inshallah, as we continue the Ramadan intensives, we're focusing on topics that are considered taboo for us as Muslims, unfortunately. And sadly, with many of us, we want to continue to live thinking that if I don't see it, or that if it's not happening in my family, it doesn't exist, I have nothing to worry about. And there's a huge disconnect between the adults, mostly being first generation of immigrants who've come to this country, and the young adults or children, those who are either born or raised here in America. And we hope and pray that in what we are addressing, that through knowledge, that Allah Azza wa Jal will better empower us to make the right decisions by understanding and knowing what is better, that we will do better. And also by understanding how severe the topics at hand are, that we will be as precautious as we can, as preventive as we can, and as careful as we can, such that first and foremost, we don't fall into them. But then secondly, that if Allah forbid that there is involvement, that we understand how urgent it is for us to get the help that is needed to stop. So today, drugs. If I were to ask you, and to be honest, of course, do you think that drugs are an issue for us as Muslims in America? So I see heads bobbing saying yes. And if I were to ask, because the majority of you are like my age, for example. If I were to ask those who were in high school and those who were in college, Muslims, are drugs an issue? I would dare to say that the absolute majority of them will agree, will confirm in the affirmative that it's huge. And if that's the case with drugs, then alcohol, of what we talked about last week, is even more. And we had numbers, stats to show that. When you think about drugs, what comes to mind? Hashish, marijuana, cocaine, meth, crystal, ecstasy, subscription pills. Aha, good, very good. Yes. Yes. What else? Is that it? Huh? Secret? Okay. Quite possibly. There's so many different names for the drugs that are out there. And there are so many different types of drugs. Those which are made for the purpose of being used or abused as a drug, but then there are things that your mind wouldn't go to them, but they are being abused and used as drugs. So let's look at some of the stuff that perhaps you're familiar with and others that you may not be familiar with. Alcohol is a drug. Believe it or not, cough medicine is used as a drug. It is abused. Youngsters are drinking it in volumes without any consideration to how this stuff is affecting them in the short term or in the long term. So that's drunk, right? Something that you drink, it's liquid. Smoked, of course, you have marijuana, you have hashish, crack cocaine. Inhaled. What does inhaled mean? That you're breathing it in. Believe it or not, glue, paint, different types of petroleum products these are among the things that are abused. That they're not made for those things, yet shaitan has opened up people to hurt themselves even through these methods. Snorted, of course, cocaine. And then you have, of course, those which are also injected. Heroin, I believe meth. Now, I'm not mentioning these things to teach anybody anything, so let nobody think that, oh, he's teaching people what's wrong and haram and how to do things. Not at all. That's not at all the case. And I think somebody's saying that also, and I'm in no way trying to give the full quantity of what is abused as a drug. But different things, especially that which has alcohol in it, which is easiest to access, is where a lot of this stuff begins, especially what are considered to be gateways. Gateways. Gateway drugs. Believe it or not, smoking is one of those gateway drugs that opens up the door for other things. Why? Just so we can understand, shaitan does not tell a person, kill yourself automatically right away. He does not tell a person to go 100% to the extreme in whatever it is. He takes people in steps. Because he knows that human nature, if he were to tell you right away, do the worst of things, you're not going to do it. But he builds you up to it. And in the way that he builds people up is by breaking them down, they're desensitizing them. Making that which is against what our fitra, our innate nature recognizes as being wrong, desensitizing us to it. So smoking, let's be honest. The first time that a person takes a puff of a cigarette, they're not saying, oh man, this is so great, I can't wait to take another puff. What happens to people the first time they smoke? They're coughing their brains out. Their body is clearly saying, this is disgusting, this is poison, stop killing me, what are you doing? Yet why is it that there are still millions upon millions of people smokers? Because they have literally changed, forced their nature, their biology, their being to accept that which otherwise the body is rejecting. So now when you have done that with cigarettes, and imagine, once again, remember associations. Yes, there's a campaign against tobacco now, but that wasn't the case a few years ago. To be cool, to be sexy, to be admirable, to be charismatic, to be intelligent, to be successful, to be whatever it was, the way that people were being portrayed was that they would be smoking, that they would have the drink, that there would be these different anchors of associations. But they're not showing you what the end results of these things are. Do you think shaitan wants to do that? Absolutely not. Do you think that with regards to those who are contracting sexually transmitted diseases, whether it be through whatever bodily fluid or through actually engaging in sexual activities because they are under the influence of one of these things or the other, you think that a person who's dying of AIDS, or somebody who's dying of whatever it may be, of different types of damage to their body that's irreversible, do you think he wants to project those images? Do you think that Hollywood or whoever else it is of advertisements, they want to show you that? They don't. They don't. So when we're looking at drugs again, it's important to understand what is a drug. If we understood what alcohol is, then we'll understand that drugs are like alcohol, but they are worse. They are worse in the way that they affect the brain and the body, impairing, worsening, detrimenting our judgment as well as our senses. So judgment meaning our mind as well as our senses, our ability of how we're perceiving and for our body to be able to react. So I would hope that in what we mentioned from last class, it is clear that what we're talking about here is a generic word in the Arabic, all under the label khamr. Khamr. What is khamr? It is not just wine. And that's the misnomer, that's the mistake that unfortunately a translation can do or a wrong teaching can do. When we look at what Imam al-Dhahabi rahmatullahi alayh in his book Al-Kaba'ir, the major sins, he described or defined al-khamr saying, وَالْخَمْرُ مَا خَامَرَ الْعَقْلِ أي غطاه سواء كان رطبا أو يابسا أو مأكولا أو مشروبا. He gives this all-inclusive definition and explanation. He says, khamr, that word in the Arabic, is that which covers, envelops the mind. Well, what does it mean to envelop the mind? It's impairing it. It is affecting it in a negative way. He says, regardless of whether it be something that is moist or whether it's dry, whether it's something that is eaten or whether it is drunk, regardless of what form it's in and how it is taken into the body, irrespective of those qualities or those traits. So with that, it should be clear that drugs are also included as being khamr, and understanding then what Islam has to teach about khamr, the verdict should be absolutely clear that it is a major sin, that it is haram. How do we know that? Well, in many ways. Here is a hadith that is authentic in Sahih al-Targhib wa Tarhib, that Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma tells us that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Kullu muskirin haram khamrun wa kullu muskirin haram." Let me repeat that again. Kullu muskirin khamrun wa kullu muskirin haram. He says everything that intoxicates, al-iskar is to cause a person to become drunk, to intoxicate them. Everything that intoxicates is khamr. That's the Arabic for it. It's a drug. And every intoxicant is prohibited. It is haram. If we were to understand the beauty of Islam, we would come to understand that maqasidul Islam, as our ulama have deduced, they say that maqasidul Islami khams, that the main essential focuses of Islam are 5 things. It is to preserve and to protect religion, life, family, the mind, and wealth. And if we can understand correctly drugs, and remember, drugs is everything, including your alcohol and otherwise. All of these, they are a terrible detriment. They work against all 5 of these beautiful things that Islam came to protect. And somebody may say, how is that possible? Well, here's the details of it. When we talk about religion, we're talking about our relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal. Intoxicants, drugs, they hurt us with regards to our relationship with Allah Rabbul Alameen. How? Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the 43rd ayah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. O you who believe, do not come close to prayer. Do not come close, near to your prayers. And that also means the masjid, because especially for the believing men, the masjid is where the congregational prayers should be offered. But the salah, your prayers as a whole, do not go near making prayers while you're intoxicated. حَتَّى تَعْلَمُوا مَا تَقُولُونَ, until you know what you're saying, meaning until you become sober. So if a person is intoxicated, they should not be worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal because their mind is not clear, they are under the influence, they are going to make major mistakes. Mistakes that they otherwise would probably not make if they were not under the influence. And we know that the connection between us and Allah Azza wa Jal is strongest in salah, while we are praying. Is that it? No, there's more. Allah Rabbul Alameen in the same chapter, the 5th chapter, the 90th ayah and the 91st, He says, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. O you who believe, certainly intoxicants, gambling, sacrificing to other than Allah Azza wa Jal, fortune telling, magic, all of these are filth from the doings of Satan. Therefore stay far and clear away from them so that you will be successful. إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر ويصدكم عن ذكر الله وعن الصلاة فهل أنتم منتهون. Certainly Satan wants to strike between you enmity and conflicts through intoxicants and gambling, and to prevent you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. So will you not then cease? Will you not then quit? Will you not then stop? So we see very clearly that with regards to protecting our religion, our faith, there is no way that drugs are going to better it to help us. Allah Azza wa Jal is making it clear, as well as what his Prophet ﷺ had said earlier. Well, what about life? How does it affect life? Well, we saw how Allah Azza wa Jal just said that إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر. Certainly, Satan wants to sow conflicts, hatred, discord between you through intoxicants and through gambling. And subhanallah, when you see people who are under the influence, you'll come to see that abuse and conflicts, they go hand in hand. So here's this with regards to violence and crime. A report by the United Kingdom's government's Drug Strategy Unit that was leaked to the press stated that due to the expensive price of highly addictive drugs, such as heroin and cocaine, drug use was responsible for the great majority of crime, including 85% of shoplifting, 70 to 80% of burglaries, and 54% of robberies. It concluded that the cost of crime committed to support illegal cocaine and heroin habits amounts to £16 billion a year in the UK. That's from in Wikipedia, illegal drugs. And we have some more. After a crackdown by the US and Mexican authorities in the first decade of the 21st century, as part of tightened border security in the wake of the September 11 attacks, border violence inside Mexico surged. The Mexican government estimates that 90% of the killings are drug-related. Did you just hear that? 90% of the killings within that country, sadly, so sadly, are drug-related. In many countries worldwide, the illegal drug trade is thought to be directly linked to violent crimes such as murder. Where is this found? This is on Wikipedia, illegal drug trade. Here's a little more. In 2015, and that's about 3 years now, substance abuse disorders resulted in 307,400 deaths. 307,400. Anybody remember how many people died in the World Trade Center bombings? Yeah. Let's say, I think 3,000. Make it an even number. Round it up. 3,000. And because of that, what happened? War against terror. And we know that a lot of that was unfortunately against countries and people who, the boogeymen. A war, billions of dollars spent to fight it. Yet, in 2015, not before the terrible atrocity of what happened in New York City, years after it, many years after it, more than a decade after it, over 300,000 deaths have occurred. This is in the United States we're talking about. Of these, the highest numbers are from alcohol use disorder, being 137,500. So there's no war against alcohol. Opioid use disorders at 122,100 deaths. There's no real war against drugs, let's be honest. Because if there was, you would see what they did, for example, of attacking a whole entire country like they did with Afghanistan, like they did with Iraq, like they did with all these other places. Amphetamine use disorders, meth and all of that sort of stuff, 12,200 deaths. In cocaine, 11,100. Now mind you, these are the numbers of what they have that are clear that they can publish. And I want to say that there's probably much more than this that have actually died from these drugs. So you want to talk about life? Well, Islam came to preserve life. And again, when we're talking about these 5 things of religion, life, etc., it's not just for the Muslims, it's for humanity. It is for humanity. It's not that we care that Muslims live and we can say, who cares, let the non-Muslims die. No, this is something that we're concerned about life as a whole, because Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who's making the religion and giving us these rules, not us. Wealth. How do drugs affect us with regards to our wealth? Well, if we were to look and see, and if I were to ask you, how much money was the global alcohol industry? Anybody remember from last class? Or anybody want to give a shot, take a number, guess? $1 trillion? Correct. Good memory, mashallah. And that was in 2014. So what do you think happens with each year? Do you think it decreases? Understand that drugs form addictions, and with addictions, what do you have? You have repeat customers. You have repeat customers. And what is the objective of all of these different drugs? And the sad thing is, like with alcohol, they are advertising it. They say that alcoholism is a disease, but yet they are advertising the very substance that causes the disease in the way that they're saying it. So the numbers are only increasing. Well, let me ask you a question. What do you think the profits are from the illegal drug trade? Because it's not legal, right? In the way that alcohol, such that we can say, What do you think? What would you say? Less or more? Because remember, it's illegal. It's not like you have stores that are legitimately selling it. All sorts of advertisements that are being shown during prime of sports and of, this and that on TV and who knows what of magazines. Do you think it's going to be more or less? More? Who says more? Raise your hands. Who says less? Raise your hands. Okay, who dares to give us a number from those who say that it's going to be more? Because it is more. Number I cannot, but it's more than $1 trillion. So it's certainly more than $1 trillion. Here's again from Wikipedia, illegal drug trade. Statistics about profits from the drug trade are largely unknown due to its illicit nature. But in 1997, World Drugs Report, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, estimated the value of the market at $4 trillion. What year was this? 1997. 20 years ago. Ranking drugs alongside arms, meaning military weapons, and oil among the world's largest traded goods. Wallahi, it blows my mind. I can't believe it. Subhanallah. So you think about this. $4 trillion that are going on drugs. Think about what $4 trillion could do of good. Take $4 trillion and divide it by 300 million Americans. How much money does that come out to per person? Take $4 trillion and divide that by 7 billion people on the earth. How much money does that come out to? And that's talking about just 1 year. That's not saying a cumulative from the beginning of drugs until 1997. Now you add to that alcohol. Imagine $5 trillion a year. And then we wonder, why don't we have money for education? Why don't we have money for health care? Why we don't have money to care for military vets? Why we don't have money to care for orphans? Why we don't have money to care for our roads and infrastructure? Why we don't have money to do this or that? Well, we have the money. It's just, where's the money being used? Unfortunately, it is going to the wrong thing. So this is where we see how, again, Islam is there to protect our wealth, and these drugs, these intoxicants, they destroy our wealth in the same way that they destroy lives and destroy faith and religion. The fourth thing, family. We know in Islam how sacred, how important, how essential family is, and how it's to be cherished, how it's to be maintained, how it's to be protected. Listen to this with regards to, again, from Wikipedia on substance abuse. How drugs are a detriment to family. The initiation of drug and alcohol use is most likely to occur during adolescence. When is adolescence? Around the age of puberty. So you're talking about middle school through high school. So the initiation of drugs and alcohol use is most likely to occur during adolescence, and some experimentation with substances by older adolescents is common. For example, results from the 2010 Monitoring the Future survey, a nationwide study on rates of substance use in the United States, show that 48.2% of 12th graders report having used an illicit drug at some point in their lives. Could you imagine that? That's literally 50% of seniors in high school. 50% of seniors in high school. Which high schools do you think they've run this survey on? Most likely, this is from public schools. I didn't get a chance to look at the details, but I don't want to say that private schools, whether they be religious or otherwise, that they're exempt. Because sadly, all too often, a lot of the times, these are problems for people who have money. Alcohol and drugs, a lot of the times it is for people who have the access to them. And so you'll find that sometimes in wealthier areas, the access to these is much easier and much more available. So I'm saying that so that nobody thinks, well, I'm going to send my kids to an Islamic school and that's going to solve the situation. It may, but it may not. Because it's not just one thing that you can do as that silver bullet that's going to completely protect and save your children and your family from ever doing this. And this is where, as we're looking at this, we got to realize it's the sum total of all of these things. Our faith, right? Our keeping close to Allah Azza wa Jal. Our family, making sure that family is healthy, loving, supportive. Our mind, that we're educating. And part of that education, brothers and sisters, is that we've got to show what there is of evil that's out there. By putting our kids within a bubble and not having them recognize what really is out there of dangers, we're hurting them. And I say this because things have changed from when I was growing up. There used to be commercials scaring you about drugs. There used to be commercials scaring you to have, and I'm going to put this in quotes, right? Unprotected or unsafe sex. There used to be commercials about, where are your children? Now, there's nothing of that. Why? I don't know who was endorsing those commercials, who was behind them, but Allah bless them because those were important. And I don't know who got rid of them, but I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal guide them and fix things, because if we want to save ourselves, we have to understand really what there are of consequences to things. And sadly, because there's such a disconnect, especially when with poor parenting, and what do I mean by poor parenting? I don't mean by parents that neglect their kids. One of the worst things that parents do is that they are the helicopter parents. What is that? Parents that are always hovering over their kids to protect them from ever feeling the pain of anything of a decision that they've made. You may say, what? I still don't understand. Parents that do not empower their children with responsibility from the time that they are young. We're waking our children up, our kids up for school. We have their clothes ready for what they're going to wear. We've made them their breakfast. We're washing their face and dressing them, bringing them to the table, sitting them down, maybe even feeding them. We have their lunch ready. We're packing everything, making sure nothing is forgotten. We bring them to school. We're doing their homework to make sure that they don't get into. We're doing their projects at school. We're doing their science fair. And if they've missed something, they've forgotten something, we're going to make sure that when they call, their school says, "Hey, your son, your daughter's forgotten their lunch," or they call and say, "Mama, Bob, I forgot my lunch." We rush over to bring it to them. We never allow them to experience what responsibility is, such that we tell them, "You are now 7, 8 years old. You need to learn how to make a bowl of cereal for yourself. You need to learn how to make lunch for yourself." You can teach them and go through it with them several times. Yes, you should. But then let that be their responsibility. Because this is one of the things that parents are always stressing out with, especially mothers, because they handle the greater burden of this. "Oh, my kids, I feel like a slave, I'm going crazy." Well, don't become their slave. Teach them. Let them be the ones that are responsible. And if it is that they don't want to make lunch for themselves, don't cry and think like, "Oh my God, my child, they're not going to make lunch for themselves, they're going to die, and I'm such a bad mother." No, you're not a bad mother. Because what happens is this. If they were to feel the consequence of their decision, especially while they're younger, they're going to learn while the stakes are very low. Because let's say, for example, that your child, they don't want to make breakfast for themselves. And you say, "Fine, you don't want to make breakfast for yourself, you're going to go to school hungry." And they go to school and they're hungry. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to learn and say, "Hey, wait a minute, man. I hurt myself by not having breakfast because my stomach was this," and maybe they're going to cry. Let them cry. Crying is good for you. What happens if they don't want to make their lunch? And you don't bring it to them? They're going to be hungry. What happens if they don't do their science fair project or other type of school project, and you're not going to do it for them? What's going to happen if they're going to have to face the teacher for not having done their homework? They need to feel something of those consequences now, because the consequences are minimal. But when we do bad parenting, and we never allow that to happen, but even worse than that, I have seen and heard with my own ears sometimes, where you'll see, for example, the kids behaving recklessly. The kids are jumping from one couch to the next. And the parents will say, "Don't do that, you're going to fall and get hurt." And they don't want to listen. They're laughing, they're giggling, they're jumping, ha 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 ha. And then boom, what happens? They fall, they get hurt. And the parent, what do? They go to the couch or to the table or wherever the child got hurt, and they start spanking that. "Oh, bad couch, you hurt my little baby. Oh, bad table, you made my little baby cry. Oh, I'm going to teach you a lesson. You don't cry. What are you teaching your child? On their bicycle, they're driving like, Mad Max. Don't do that, you're going to get hurt. And they fall and they get hurt. "Oh, bad bicycle, you made my baby get hurt." As opposed to taking the approach of saying to them, and they're going to be crying, "What's wrong?" "Oh, I got hurt, I fell." "Well, why did you fall?" They have to make the connection in here and in here. "Why did you fall?" "Because I was jumping, because I..." Aha. Did you know that was bad? That you could fall and you can get hurt? And they may not want to answer right away because they know. They heard you saying, "Don't do it, you're going to get hurt." And they may end up saying, yeah, you said don't do it. Uh-huh. Next time, if you want to jump, you can jump again. That's okay. You have to let them learn. So, the family, our families and families are being torn apart by the pain and by the suffering of those who are alcoholics and drug addicts. And mind you, an alcoholic and a drug addict is not going to easily and openly say, I have a problem. They're in denial. Even though some of them may still be functional and keep a job. They may. Or school. But they are changed. They change for the worse. And the family, whether they recognize it right away or not, they're suffering there. Look, I want to read us a little bit more statistics on some things. And these are stats from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. This is from SEMHA, which comes Center for Behavioral Health Statistics and Quality. It's a 2015 national survey on drug use and health. And SEMHA, I guess, SEMHSA stands for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Right? So this was a 2015 national survey. But the report, anyway, it says 2015, but then it says 2014 report. So how's that? I have no idea. Here's the summary. This national report summarizes findings from the 2014 survey, national survey on drug use and health, so NSDUH, on trends in the behavioral health of people aged 12 years old and older. For me, it's a shock to even hear that they're starting at 12 years old. Why do you think they're starting at 12 years old? Because that's as early an age at which these issues, these problems are occurring. Alcohol, drugs, smoking, whatever. It is happening from adolescence. 12 years old and older in the civilian, non-institutionalized population of the United States. So what does non-institutionalized civilian population mean? It's talking about those who are not in shelters, not in boarding houses, not in college dorms, not migrant workers on camps, not in halfway houses. It also excludes people with no fixed addresses, people that are homeless or people that are in shelters. It doesn't include military personnel, whether they're on active duty or not. It doesn't include residents of institutional groups such as jails and nursing homes and mental institutions and long-term hospitals. And those are a lot of different groups that were just mentioned. This is talking about your average regular person who lives in home and has a regular job, etc., that is not in those categories of what were mentioned. Here are some of these statistics. Tobacco use. And again, you may say, why am I even bringing tobacco in? Because we have to understand that one thing leads to the next. In the Arabic, it's referred to as at-tadarruj. It's a transitioning, it's a leading into, it's that gateway, that pathway to other things. In 2014, an estimated 66.9 million, 67 million people aged 12 and older were current users of tobacco products. That's total tobacco products, including 55 million cigarette smokers. That's huge. What's the population in America? 300 million. 67 million, that's a quarter of the population. Can you imagine a quarter of the population in the United States are smoking or using tobacco products? Subhanallah. Illicit drug use. What is illicit drugs? Your marijuana, your cocaine, your meth, whatever. What do you think as far as the population is concerned? What's a number? And again, this is from 2014. What do you think the number is going to be? 3 million? In 2014, 27 million people aged 12 or older used an illicit drug in the past 30 days. It's not once in their lifetime. In the past 30 days. So you're talking about 27 million people in the past month having used marijuana, cocaine, meth, whatever. And of course, this could also include the abuse of prescription medicines too. And he says, which corresponds to about 1 in 10 Americans, 10% of the population. SubhanAllah, can you imagine 10% of the population in the past month has used or abused drugs? It says the illicit drug use estimate for 2014 continues to be driven primarily by marijuana use and non-medical use of prescription pain pills or relievers. With 22 million current marijuana users aged 12 and older. And that's in the past 30 days. And we're also told that the use of many types of other illicit drugs has not increased in recent years. However, the percentage of people aged 12 or older in 2014 who were current heroin users was higher than the percentages in most years from 2002 to 2013. So subhanAllah, look at that. They may look at it and say that, well, there's not an increase, but we have an increase in the worse drugs and the stronger, more serious stuff of heroin, etc. Well, naturally, because shaitan is leading a person to that which goes only worse and worse. If you think about and understand how drugs work, they affect the brain. The biology, there's the dopamine that's in the brain, which is the same chemical that when a person is having an orgasm. That same chemical, that same high, that same feeling. And so anyone who can relate with that understands that that is a very powerful anchor association. And when a person can more easily have that through the smoking of something or the popping of something or the drinking of something, because understand that when it comes to sexuality, and we'll talk about that tomorrow actually, it may not be as easy to hook up with somebody, although haram is out there in all different ways. But it is much easier for somebody to be all alone and to get high. And in doing so, naturally what happens is your body builds up a tolerance. So that first time the person tries it, maybe just the one time they took the puff, it did the job. But then it has to become 2 puffs. It has to become the entire joint. It has to become 2 of them. Where it gets to the point that what you're craving biologically and psychologically, that you need stronger and stronger drugs to get the same feeling. And that's why what happens is that they are gateway drugs that from the cigarettes, the alcohol, the marijuana, it moves up to the other stuff. If intervention is not taken, if a person does not stop. And then once a person goes to the heavier stuff, cocaine, meth, whatever, heroin, and don't think, and Allah save our youngsters as a whole and save society as a whole. Once a person is an addict, if they are not going to literally go to the emergency room for immediate medical help, the craving is something that's going to push them to the more stronger, more devastating drugs. And once a person takes that, goes in that direction, the chances for recovery are much, much less. So hold on, just so that we can put things into perspective. What was mentioned here of illicit drug use, they're not looking at that as being substance use disorder. So they have a special category called substance use disorder. And they're saying that approximately 21.5 million people aged 12 or older in 2014 had a substance use disorder in the past year, including 17 million with alcohol use disorder. So you take 21.5 and 17, you have easily like almost 40 million people, right? That's a huge number. Substance use disorder, you're talking about people that have now been diagnosed medically as being addicts, and there's treatment that's taking place. So you take that and you add that to the other 27 million from before who say, nah, I don't got a problem. You know, people who they'll deny. The people who drink the alcohol, no, it's just a social thing. I'm not an alcoholic. The one who smokes the weed or whatever the case is, I'm not addicted. No, this is just, they will have every excuse to show and to make it as though they don't have a problem. But 50 million people total, when you look at those numbers, 60 million, that is huge. Absolutely huge. So illicit drug use, age 12 to 17, slightly more than 2.3 million adolescents, ages 12 to 17 in 2014. Now this is giving us a smaller range. Were current users of illicit drugs, which represents approximately 10% of adolescents. So 10% of our adolescents, age 12 to 17, were current users of illicit drugs. That's scary. Ages 18 to 25, more than 1 in 5 young adults ages 18 to 25. 22% of that age group were current users of illicit drugs in 2014. And that percentage corresponds to about 7.7, almost 8 million young adults who are users of illicit drugs. Ages 26 and older, in 2014, 8.3% of adults ages 26 and older were current users of illicit drugs, or about 17 million adults. And that's just in America. What do you see happening with regards to the numbers? 10% of 12 to 17-year-olds, 22% of 18 to 25-year-olds. That's a huge increase.
It is also very much proportional to the age, as the age is increasing, the number is increasing.
It's proportional.
Yes.
The fifth thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Some of the I heard, don't know that, but some of the children, they use the nail polish remover and they drink it. And
Allah
they
understand.
high. Also, some of the children, they use the NyQuil at, which is alcohol in it, and they drink it excessively and different.
So the abuse takes place on so many different forms, as was mentioned, whether it be, over-the-counter types of medicines, your NyQuils, cough syrups, who knows what, other types of things, it is there. We're moving on to the fifth thing. The last of what we're focused on is that Islam also is there to protect the mind. Drugs do the exact opposite. And here's a quote from Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah in his book Al-Kaba'ir, the Major Sins. He says, وَالْحَشِيشَةُ المصنوعة من ورق القنب حرام كالخمر يحد شاربها كما يحد شارب الخمر. I'll take this in sections. He says, al-hashish, right? Hashish, marijuana, whatever it is of the different types of plants that are taken and dried and then smoked, are haram, they are prohibited, just like alcohol. He says, and the person who consumes it in public and is seen to be intoxicated, that they are supposed to be punished in the same way that the person who consumes alcohol is supposed to be punished. Now, within Islamic law, government has the right to decide how they want to deal with violations against the law. It doesn't go into people's houses. But if somebody's going to be in public drunk or intoxicated, high, whatever, they have a right to enact whatever the punishment or penalty will be. In the time of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim, in the beginning, they would be whipped 40 times in public. They would be flogged 40 times if they were found to be intoxicated in public. And this was in the beginning during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. In the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, he doubled it. And some of the Sahaba said to him, and others of companions said to him, why are you increasing the number? He said, I'm increasing it because the quantity of people that are increasingly intoxicated in public is requiring it to slow down or to prevent this from happening. What does that mean? It means that more and more people were unfortunately consuming alcohol and drugs and being out in public exposing themselves. So to minimize that, the punishment became worse. He goes on to say, وَهِيَ أَخْبَثُ مِنَ الْخَمْرِ. He says, but these drugs, they are even worse than the intoxicants of alcohol. Why? من جهة أنها تفسد العقل والمزاج. He says, because what they do is that they ruin the mind and the attitude, the mood. They affect the person's psyche as a whole. حتى يصير في الرجل تخنث ودياثة وغير ذلك من الفساد. He goes so much so that you'll see within a man. And he's mentioning the men here because it is primarily the men that would be exposed to this type of thing, and that he's bringing out as those who would be more public in what was taking place. He says so much so that it would cause the men to become effeminate, meaning to lose their masculine qualities, and it would also cause them to lose anything of integrity, of self-respect. So much so, diyatha, that word, the youth, I don't know if there is really an equivalent for it in the English, but that's a man who does not care what his women folk do as far as their reputation is concerned. They don't care whether their wife, their mother, their sister, their daughter, that she's physically engaging, interacting with people in any different way of what is haram. Somebody may say, no, that's not real, that can't be true. Now, somebody who's high, and depending on how high they are and how severe it is, they're in a different world. And if you don't know, this is among the main reasons why young girls who feel that they're being suffocated at home and they're being restricted at home, and that, you know, if they get out there in the world that they can become who knows what, of a movie star, of an actress, of a singer, of a model, and maybe they're living in a poor area, that if they go out into the bigger city that they're going to strike it rich and who knows what. Human sex trafficking is huge. And the young girls, through drugs, by drugging them, they then control them. Because once you have an addict, you have a person that you can control. And the men, when they get high, when they become intoxicated, I don't know, what can I say? Their priorities are no longer there. Let me ask you some questions here with regards to perhaps one that is a bit more common. Marijuana, but drugs as a whole. Why Muslims, I'm not talking about the rest of the world. Why are Muslims using drugs? Why would a Muslim dare to use drugs? One at a time, go ahead. So peer pressure? Peer pressure, their friends. Yeah. But hold just 1 second on that point. And here's something that's so important. Children that are raised in a home that don't have a personality, that don't have a voice, that the parents are the ones that are always dictating to them what to do, kind of like robots, and the kids are just yes, yes, yes. Those cultures that the child is to be seen and just to obey, but not to be heard, not to have a word to say, to have an opinion. Those kids are the ones that are most vulnerable to peer pressure. Why? Because that's all that they're used to in their life with their home, their families. They're not allowed to in their home that if, for example, they're not even asked what their position or opinion is on something. They're basically just told what to do. So their self-esteem is so weak. And if they're going to be in some type of a setting and their friend is going to say to them something like, oh, don't be a loser. Don't you want to be cool? Don't you want so-and-so to like you? Don't you want to hang out with us? They crumble. Yes, what else? The environment.
That's why in my opinion, when we have so-called ashab awwal rasul, when the environment here, the friends are good and they are not in a negative environment, or they are in a negative environment, that's the one.
So the environment as a whole, absolutely. The family, school, the community. The healthier each of these three things are, they reinforce what's needed to have a healthy individual. An individual that's going to be healthy up here, healthy in here. What else? Why else? Music. How does music cause people to do drugs? If you understand, number one, what's mentioned in the music itself of lyrics, but number two, the music videos. Number three, parties in which the music and dancing, clubs, things of that sort. Absolutely 100%. And this is where I want to also give some advice. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Because some of our brothers and sisters who may say, whether they're in high school or college, and they're going to go to a party, and of course they're going to hide it from their parents. And they may say, oh, I'm going to visit so-and-so. When parents, we don't necessarily know who our children's friends are or their parents. And this is really a huge mistake on our side. Muslim or non-Muslim, we should know who their friends are. and should have their numbers and their names. But I'm saying, if you are going to go to a party and you're saying, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to do any drugs, please, 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 I beg you, always keep your eye on whatever it is that you're going to be carrying with you of your drink, whether it be water, whether it be soda, whether it be a juice, whether it be in a cup, whether it be in a can, whether it be in a bottle. Why? Because somebody is going to slip something in your drink. It is so common that in these types of settings that you got people, drug dealers, that they're not necessarily wearing a shirt saying, I'm the drug dealer, that are going to slip something into your drink. And if you're a girl, especially if you're a girl, and believe it or not, whether your parents or anybody else has told you or has never told you that you are beautiful, you are beautiful. Whether you cover Islamically or you don't cover Islamically, you are beautiful. And you're going to go to one of those places, a guy is going to look to want to slip something in your drink so that he can get you drunk, because what guys understand is that the moment a girl gets drunk, he's going to take advantage of her. That he is going to take advantage of her. What else? Is that it?
The Muslim community doesn't talk about such stuff because the youngsters don't have any idea what can happen.
The Muslim community doesn't talk about these things, therefore the youngsters don't know what can happen to them. I agree with you too. Let's be honest, look at the attendance for something like this. And look at the attendance, for example, for Taraweeh. We really still have our priorities misaligned. And worse than that, there will be folks who, if and when some of these taboo topics are brought up, that they will complain. They will complain. What else? Is that all of it? You are so right. That we don't know how to even begin with regards to this stuff. There's nothing we don't know. And the sad thing is that this is where school should be teaching, having programs for parents to educate them. The school should be having programs to educate the kids themselves. The masjid should be having programs with law enforcement, etc., to help educate us. But like with so many things, the quantity of people that should be present, they're not. What about movies, media? Don't you notice how many a film, how many a movie includes intoxicants, includes drugs in them? How do they portray people that are drunk and people that are high? How do they portray them? Do they portray them in the most horrible, ugly way? Not at all. Right? How do they portray them? They portray them as happy. Right? They're cracking up. They're happy. They're tripping over themselves. They're like, they don't have a worry. They wake up making the statement like, Eureka, that was the greatest thing I ever did. And they're proud of the tattoos that they got and who knows what of the crazy things that they did. And so what do you think is happening when we're watching this sort of stuff? What is it doing? It is desensitizing us. It is falsely portraying a danger as something that is fun, something that is cool, that is an adrenaline rush. In the same way that crime, violence is being put out there in the movies, that we are becoming desensitized, that they have to come up with more gorish and craziest types of violence. And it's sad. And some folks will say that Hollywood has a very wicked agenda, call it a conspiracy theory or not. But if the shoe fits, subhanAllah. This is where you'll have, for example, believers of Christians and others that'll put together different types of things to help parents. One such app and website is called Kids in Mind. You can download it on your phone, you can put the name of the movie in, and it'll break it down. Profanity, sexuality or nudity, violence, blasphemy, whatever it is. And it'll give you exactly what it is that happens within the movie so that you can better tell, is this something that you want to watch with, your kids? Expose them to it? And before I move on, it's funny when I hear sometimes some of these actors, these stars themselves, saying that, no, I don't let my kids watch my movies. I don't let them watch the movies. You know what I mean? Why? Sure, who doesn't know him, sure.
He came to this particular call saying that not that every equipment which is invented, such as computer or television, but if it's not put to the use to the correct reason or right reason, then it's very harmful. He said one more thing. He said, having television in your sitting room is like having an open sewage line.
Wow. So look, when we talk about technology, it is a tool to be used for good or for bad, although the majority of it may be for bad. But here's another thing of why people are using drugs, Muslims are using drugs, it's because of misconceptions. Like what? I've actually heard where some have said, was that a hand up there in the back or no? No? Okay. They said drugs are natural. Like marijuana, it's okay because it's natural, it's from the earth. That's not haram. So that's a misconception that they have. That because it's something that is natural from the earth, it's not synthetically formulated, that therefore it's got to be good. Others, and wallahi, this is something that hurts, where they say that it makes them feel better, to be more calm, to be focused, to reduce their anxiety, and that some of our youngsters who are huffaz of Quran leading in Taraweeh are smoking marijuana beforehand because it helps them to keep calm, to feel better, to reduce their anxiety, to be focused, according to what they say. But let me ask you a question. To feel better, to be calm, to reduce the anxiety. Wow, what does that sound like? I'm not playing Mr. Sigmund Freud here of a psychoanalyst. But when parents are pushing their children, and they are pushing them so hard, and I'm telling you, parents want to compete and brag and show off with regards to their kids among their own siblings, brothers against brothers and sisters. MashaAllah, my child has memorized Quran. They memorize at this age. They have an ijazah. They're leading Taraweeh. And to be able to, they're not looking at, and they don't seem to even understand what the situation of their son is. They're not understanding what type of stress this young man is going through. I have parents still till today, they'll come up to me, mothers, fathers, saying to me, Imam, can you please let my son lead in salah? He has such a beautiful recitation. Imam, my son is a hafidh, can you please let him lead in Taraweeh? And then I'll have sometimes some of those same kids themselves, because I've been able to identify who the parent is, where they'll come up to me and say something like, Imam, can I please lead in a prayer? I realize that he's not doing nothing more than listening to whatever his mother said. Oh, he didn't listen to me, maybe he'll listen to you, you ask him. And the Jama'ah has no idea. We don't know whether homeboy is as high as a kite leading you in salah, you and me in salah, or leading some other Jama'ah in salah. We don't know. I'm not saying this so that we can start having bad thoughts of our hufad. Please don't misunderstand me. But I want us to pay attention to understand that there are misconceptions in that if our brothers, our sisters, those who are under pressure to become doctors and to who knows what, and they are taking whatever it may be of prescription medicines or over the counter, smoking marijuana or otherwise, thinking that, oh, this reduces my anxiety, it's helping me to focus, these are misconceptions. Another misconception is because they say it's not addicting. I'm only going to use it now because I have to pass that exam. I got to get through med school. I have to pass the bar exam. I have to pass the LSAT. It's not addicting. Once I finish, subhanallah, really it's not addicting? That's a misconception. Cigarettes are not addicting. Alcohol is not addicting. Marijuana is not addicting. Cocaine is not addicting. What is addicting? Water? And the last reason that I'll mention of why people do it is because they'll actually make the statement and say drugs. Now drugs, alcohol, yes, they're mentioned in the Quran. But drugs, they're not mentioned in the Quran or in Islam. They're not haram. So, and what we're going to finish off with here is a critical Islamic analysis so that we'll come to understand with regards to those misconceptions in a way that should become absolutely crystal clear that what we're dealing with is undeniably haram, prohibited. And the way that I'm going to do this is we're going to go through a process in usul al-fiqh of qiyas, but before we go to qiyas, the steps in doing so. So, everyone will agree that alcoholic drinks, alcohol, the intoxicant, it is in the Quran and it is in the Sunnah. It is mentioned, the evidence is there, and the ruling is there that it is haram, right? In case somebody doesn't remember, Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, as was stated, as was mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. O you who believe, certainly alcohol or intoxicants, gambling, worshipping, sacrificing to other than Allah Azza wa Jal, fortune telling, are all filth from the deeds, from the doings, from the actions of Satan. فَاجْتَنِبُوا. This is a command in the Quran. Distance yourself from them so that you will be successful. And then usul al-fiqh were taught al-amru yufidu al-wujub, that a command, the imperative form of the verb, means that that matter is mandatory. What's mandatory? That we distance ourselves as far away as we can from those things, those that are mentioned. Intoxicants, gambling, worshipping other than Allah Azza wa Jal, and anything of fortune telling. And then the ayah continues, 91. إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر ويصدكم عن ذكر الله وعن الصلاة فهل أنتم منتهون. Certainly the devil, Satan, wants to sow between you problems, conflicts, hatred, animosity through intoxicants and gambling, and to prevent you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. So will you not then abstain? Will you not then cease? And that statement, that last ayah, is a clear indication, because anything of what has to do with the devil, is haram, is a prohibition because he's only up to evil, to that which is no good. But we also have a hadith that further makes it clear. That hadith that Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates to us, saying that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Ma askara kathiruhu faqaliluhu haram." Whatever intoxicates in a larger quantity, it is prohibited even in a small quantity. And this hadith is authentic, collected by Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, and Ahmad. So, when we look at now the issue of qiyas, which is analogous reasoning, the scholars, in order for them to first do that, they look at what is mentioned with regards to khamr, intoxicants, of what's in the Quran and what's in Sunnah. The verdict is there that it is haram. But the reason why, al-illa, it's referred to as illa in the Arabic, in terminology of usul al-fiqh or al-shar'i. What is the reason, the cause for the intoxicant to be prohibited? And in order for them to do that, they devised this ingenious method called as-sabru wa-taqsim. As-sabr meaning to analyze and to test. At-taqsim is to gather and to categorize. Now personally, I think that at-taqsim wa sabr makes more sense, because you gather and collect and then you test and analyze. You may say, what are you even talking about? They look at all of the traits, the attributes of that particular thing, they collect them, and then they test them, they analyze each and every one of them to see which one of these is the reason, the illah, the cause for Allahu Rabbul Alameen prohibiting that particular thing, in this case, al-khamr, intoxicants. So, when we look at at-taqsim, let's gather together, for example, everything of what could be known with regards to alcoholic drinks. Let's say, for example, wine, just to make it simple. If we were to do that, what are the traits and the characteristics that we would look at? We would see that what? Help me out. It's a liquid. What else? Huh? Well, the intoxicating effect, yes. But whether, how much or little, some of that does depend on how much a person consumes and the person's body size and biology. But the intoxication, yes, good. What else? Its taste. What else? Huh? Fashion? Well, that's hard to measure. That's hard to measure too. They're looking specifically at the thing. Not necessarily the age, but the smell and its source, its origin, what it comes from. So here are 5 things. They're looking at it, that it's a liquid, its taste, its odor or smell, what it's made from, and that it intoxicates. And they're going to now study each of these to see and analyze which of these is the reason why. Is it one or more than one thing? So being a liquid, they look at it and they say, for example, being a liquid, in and of itself, it's not a problem. Why? Because we see that we're able to consume liquids, whether it be milk, whether it be water, whether it be juice, and there's nothing wrong with it. So it can't be that it's a liquid. With regards to its smell, well, it may have a pleasant smell to somebody, it may have a disgusting smell to somebody. So it's a bit arbitrary. But yes, in Islam, if it's a bad odor, we know that Islam is against like bad smells, right? We're not supposed to smell bad or offensive, foul. That's why cleanliness and perfume and all that, showers and bathing, hygiene is so big in Islam. But odor really can't be it either. Taste. It tastes sweet, it tastes bitter, it tastes I don't know, sour, it tastes good, it tastes bad. Well, that's also arbitrary. What one person may like, another may dislike, it can't be the taste. Its source. It comes from fruits, whether it be grapes, whether it be apples, whether it be dates, whether it be honey, whether it be who knows what. It comes from grains, wheat, oats, hops, barley, whatever. But it can't be that. Those are natural and we're allowed to consume those things. The only thing that is left from the trait is that it is an intoxicant. And when? Oh, and color. I forgot color. Could it be because it's clear, or because it's red, or because it's white, or because it's yellow, or because it's brown, or because it's green, or because it's purple, or pink, or... Colors don't matter at all, because we see that we're able to consume things that are natural, that are liquid, that have different colors, whether it be water, whether it be milk, whether it be honey water, whether it be juice. The color doesn't matter. So they come to the conclusion that the only thing that it can be is because it intoxicates. That the illah, the sole cause, the trait, the reason why khamr, alcohol, is prohibited is because it intoxicates. And in intoxication, it alters the person's mind, it alters their speech, it alters their behavior. And the impairment of being under the influence is such that it causes people who are under the influence to behave in a way that they otherwise probably most likely would not. It also endangers them as well as others, as we clearly see in the case of drinking and driving. As well as what we see in the case of those who become liquid strong, meaning that, they get drunk and then all of a sudden they feel like they're Hulk, or they feel like they're Thor, or they feel like they're Muhammad Ali. But they don't understand that they're moving in slow motion, that their coordination is completely off, and that they get angry because actually what happens is that whatever your person is feeling, it further exacerbates that feeling, that mood. This is why somebody who's sad, it makes them even more depressed and they end up committing suicide. That if they're angry, it causes them to become even more angry, that they become violent. That they're a little turned on, it causes them to become even worse with regards to that. Therefore, who knows what can happen. Therefore, in the end, the only trait that would seem relevant as the sole reason for Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prohibiting alcohol is the trait of it being an intoxicant. So with this we can understand that the claim that, or the misconception that drugs are permissible because they're natural, that it becomes absolutely false. Why? Because alcohol comes from absolutely natural sources. From grapes, from dates, from honey, from grains, from wheat. But yet, everybody who believes in Allah Azza wa Jal and in His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam in the last day will recognize that alcohol is clearly prohibited in the Quran and Sunnah. And now we're going to see through qiyas, the analogous reasoning, how the ulama take that which is not mentioned directly in the Quran and Sunnah, especially for those who still want to be a bit stubborn and rebellious or hard-headed and say, no, that's only talking about wine, or that's only talking about alcohol. How drugs are also given the same exact verdict, especially if and when we can understand that the effects of alcohol are horrible, and that the effects of drugs are even worse, which further make it on that list of being prohibited even stronger. So, qiyas, just so that we understand that with regards to the agreed upon evidence within the four schools of thought, they all agree that the Quran is a source of evidence for Islamic law. The Sunnah is a source of evidence for Islamic law. Ijma', consensus, is a source of evidence for Islamic law. And the fourth is qiyas, which is analogous reasoning. So now you're going to say, what exactly is it? How do we understand? We're going to explain it, inshallah. Alcohol is the substance. The ruling is what? What's the verdict on it? Haram, prohibited. Why? What's the illah, the reason? Because it's an intoxicant. Drugs, regardless of whether we're talking about marijuana, whether we're talking about heroin, whether we're talking about, regardless, drugs. We need to come to a conclusion. What is it with regards to going through that same process of as-sabr wa taqsim, of gathering the traits and qualities of it, and then testing and analyzing them to see what we have? Will come to the same conclusion, that it's made from different things, it has a smell, it has a taste, it looks a certain way, who knows what. In the end, what we find is that what is shared is the illah, the reason. The reason of what both of these things have in common is the intoxication. Both of them intoxicate, and the drugs intoxicate at a level that is even worse. So if drugs intoxicate in the same way that alcohol intoxicates, and the verdict for alcohol, because alcohol intoxicates, is that it's prohibited, therefore then the conclusion is that the verdict for drugs is also prohibited, haram, because it intoxicates. As simple as that, done. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No one can come and say after that, wait, you didn't understand. Islamically speaking, it is crystal clear that because both of them share in the quality of intoxicating, and that drugs, especially the harder stuff, but drugs, they intoxicate, therefore, because they share in that same trait, they take the same ruling. Done. And we're going to wrap it up with the most commonly used drug, aside from alcohol, which we beat it to death yesterday. But marijuana, and in doing so, hopefully better address some of those misconceptions. And we're focusing on, it is dangerous, it is serious, but it is the least with regards to the other drugs that are far worse. And hoping that if we can understand marijuana and put things into perspective through better understanding marijuana, that everything else that is worse than it, that it becomes even more so clear and dangerous, and that we recognize where we should stand with regards to it. So all of what I'm quoting comes from WebMD, and it's recreational marijuana facts. So here's the stuff that they say with regards to effects of marijuana in the short term. Marijuana can affect your ability to think and solve problems. So somebody may say, well, I don't need to think and solve problems. Really? Coordination? Well, I don't need to be coordinated. What do you think is happening with folks who, their coordination, their reaction time, their judgment, their ability to think and to solve problems, and they get behind the wheel? It is the same thing as alcohol, and perhaps even worse. And how many people did we say are dying, and how many people are being handicapped and hurt just through drinking and driving accidents, not talking about domestic abuse and violence and everything else of that sort? So here's the short-term effects again with marijuana, and they're no joke. the ability to think and solve problems, coordination, reaction time, judgment, memory, mood. And mood is a big one. Because some folks will take marijuana thinking that they need something to help their mood. They have stress. They have problems. They are who knows what. That is not going to necessarily make things better. It may actually make things worse. Because whatever your mood is, it's going to further enhance that. You're feeling sad, it's going to make you even more depressed. You're feeling depressed, it's going to make you suicidal. You're feeling stressed out, it's going to make you even more anxious. Anyway, long-term regular use can lead to memory loss. And I'm sure that, let me go through these. Memory loss, trouble learning and thinking, changes in brain structure, trouble at work and school. And if you haven't seen, for example, some of these movies or, whatever it is where they show some of these potheads and how they portray them as being, slow and dumb and who knows what of stuff, and it's real. Yeah, there's the exceptions where somebody may still be doing great and who knows what of stuff, but we're not talking about the exceptions. Long-term use, this is what it's saying. Memory loss, trouble learning and thinking, changes in your brain structure that is literally going to affect your brain, the physical brain, in trouble at work or in school. Continuing, marijuana affects your body in many ways, and some of them are lung problems, such as chronic cough and trouble breathing, a faster heart rate, which may raise your risk for a heart attack, mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, and psychosis. And to be honest, again, not to want to think bad thoughts, but with so many younger folk dying these days of heart attacks, I wonder if maybe some of it may be due to drugs. I wonder. I'm not investigating. I'm not being suspicious. I'm just asking the question. I'm throwing it out there. Let's get a bit more specific. How does marijuana affect teens? Because this stuff, it is being started at such a young age. In the same way as alcohol and tobacco, from elementary school, middle school, high school, the effects of marijuana can be even more serious in young people. There's a much higher, and I'm quoting here, there's a much higher risk in people whose brains are developing. Those 25 and under, says Dr. Kevin Hill, assistant professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School and director of the Substance Abuse Consultation Service at McLean Hospital. He says if you're a young person and you're using regularly, there's a whole host of problems that can occur. Like what, somebody may ask? Regular marijuana use during the teen years has been linked to a lower IQ, changes to areas of the brain involved with learning, memory, and attention, anxiety, depression, and other mental health problems, dropping out of school, and worse performance in college. What about if you're pregnant? How does marijuana affect your baby? And believe it or not, and wallahi, this is the sad part. I spoke with a Muslim brother who told me about a sister who was married, pregnant, smoking marijuana. And this is horrible because this is where sometimes, it's at least in my head, sometimes something of a debate. Do you allow a parent to consume alcohol and drugs while they're pregnant such that they are committing a crime against that unborn child? Just because it's in their body, does that grant them the right to take drugs, to drink alcohol, to smoke cigarettes, without concern for how that is going to affect, hurt that child? Here's what it says. We know the effects of alcohol on pregnancy. Of them are miscarriage, birth defects, low birth weight, and developmental problems that are possible. So this is alcohol, they're saying. What does alcohol do? Causes miscarriage, birth defects. Yani birth defects, subhanallah. Go someday into the children's hospital or wing or something like that and look at these little kids that are ill. And I'm not saying they're there because their parents have drunk alcohol while they were pregnant. I'm not saying that. But just look at them. Your heart tears asunder out of pain for seeing the child ill and to see them suffering. And to think that a person, the mother, that she will consume things. And this is why in America there's a huge issue with the problem with regards to abortion. And as Muslims we need to know this. I had attended a workshop at the Unitarian Church in Dallas where my good friend, Dr. Pastor Daniel Cantor is the chief, I was going to say the chief rabbi, the chief reverend, the bishop. And they were talking about reproductive health issues and how here in America, Christians, which are the majority of the country, for them everything is black and white, unfortunately. That it's no to abortion, yes to life. There's no gray area in the middle. Among the things that we came to recognize is that many a woman who does not want to be pregnant or get pregnant, who is unfortunately being pimped by somebody, who is being abused by somebody. And the amount of pimping and abuse with regards to women, it is horrific. Wallahi, our women, forgive me for saying it, but they are queens. They are queens in the homes of a Muslim family. And if they don't believe it, all they need to do is go ahead and attend workshops like that and see the type of abuse and horrors that are really happening. And it is better that in these cases where they are being raped, where they are being pimped, where they are being, and they don't want that child, and they are because they are addicted to stuff, there should be, in these types of cases, absolutely the right for them to abort those children instead of having to deal with whatever they already are struggling with and to have a child be brought into that type of a world. And I'm only giving some of the different many things of craziness that were brought up during that reproductive health workshop to help us understand that when it comes to some of these bills, we need to be educated. As Muslims, we need to be educated because we need to take positions on things and we need to be clear on the alliances that we have. So we know that with alcohol, miscarriage, birth defects, low birth weight, that in and of itself causes problems, and developmental problems. All of these are possibilities with regards to when alcohol is being consumed during that time that the woman is pregnant. The effects of marijuana during pregnancy aren't as well known, Dr. Hill says. But early research suggests that children born to mothers who smoked marijuana during pregnancy have more problems with their emotions, with their attention, with their memory, and with their impulsive behavior. Subhanallah. Think about emotions. What are one of the biggest things that we as parents are struggling with regards to our kids. I mean, the number one thing I keep hearing is they don't respect. They don't have respect. They yell back. They behave like this. They don't care. I'm not saying that our kids are smoking the marijuana or that our mothers smoked marijuana and that's why we're having the issues. But I want us to understand something. That whatever there is already of a hardship that are just human being issues. If a woman is going to be smoking marijuana while she is pregnant, and most of us, we don't take classes on becoming a parent, we don't even take classes on becoming a spouse, we have no idea what we're getting into, we freestyle everything, it is so stressful, we don't have the extended family to help us, we don't have a society that's there to help reinforce what is right. And so having even one child is too much for many of us. We complain and say, oh my God, it's a monster. Well, when you don't know that that's a human being, that's a life. That is a complicated, sophisticated creation from Allahu Rabbul Alameen. That is physical, that is emotional, that is spiritual, that is intellectual. And there has to be a balance. Whenever something is out of balance, you have havoc. Now you further complicate things through drugs, you further complicate things through alcohol, you have a Frankenstein. Allah save us. And they continue to say that THC, which is the main chemical among chemicals that are addicting and that have the effects within marijuana, THC can also get into breast milk. And it's not clear what effect that might have on the baby's brain. So not only is it 9 months of being in the belly that the baby's getting high with its mother, or that it's getting drunk with its mother, but now if they are still consuming these things afterwards and they are nursing the baby is also still continuing to get high or drunk through the breast milk, or that it's affecting them. And subhanallah, that these children can't talk while they're still in the womb, and that they can't talk while they're still suckling. The question, is marijuana addictive? I'm quoting once again still from Dr. Hill, that Harvard professor. He says, there's no question about it, Hill says. Marijuana is both physically and psychologically addictive. Physically and psychologically. Physically, understand that that's biologically. Psychologically means that there's an association, there's a trigger, there's something that, even though it's not biological, it's psychologically an addiction. But most people who use it don't become addicted, he says. But most people. But I don't want anybody to look at that and say that, khalas, he gave us the answer, we're good now, we're safe. How do you know what most means? How do you know how much usage that's referring to? How long a duration? How do you know whether or not what you're getting is clean or whether it's been tainted with rat poison or who knows what of other types of craziness of what they're doing today? Why would you put yourself at risk? Why do you even take the chance of being a statistic? Allahul Musta'an. And as we conclude, here are some statistics that come from MADD, MADD.org, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So it focuses on alcohol but also on drugs. About 1 in 7 teens binge drink. And if we could understand that again, smoking, drinking lead into marijuana, to drugs, we need to pay attention to these things. 1 in 7. Yet only 1 in 100 parents believe that his or her teen drinks. Look at that number, man. 1 out of 100 parents believes that their child is capable of doing it, that their child does it, but actually 1 in 7 does. So what is that telling you? A huge disconnect. Major disconnect. Parents think, yeah, my child, no, never, no way. The kids are like, they don't know anything. What else? In 2016, 9% of all drivers involved in fatal crashes during the day were drunk, compared to 30% at night. So there's a time for the haram too. The majority of haram of drinking takes place when? It's telling us here at night, because that's when the majority of the deaths that take place due to alcohol and intoxication, 30% happen at night. But are there those that happen during the day? Even during the day. Subhanallah. In addition, almost twice as many alcohol-related traffic fatalities occur during the weekends compared to the weekdays. So weekends, even worse. At night during the weekends, that's number one. People want to party. Friday night, Saturday night, people want to celebrate. Allahul Mustan. Almost half of all drivers who were killed in crashes and tested positive for drugs also had alcohol in the system. Half. Drugs and alcohol. Teen alcohol use kills 4,300 people a year. That's just from alcohol. And that's for something for us and for our youngsters. And I really hope and pray, this is where I'm hoping that whatever it is that we're covering, it doesn't stay here. That even though we're able to, alhamdulillah, stream it to live stream on Facebook, that it needs to get out. We need to hear more. Let nobody think that people don't die from drinking alcohol. In the same way that they may be fooled into thinking people don't die from drugs, that people don't die from alcohol. Teens, 4,300 a year, 4,300. How? Why? Because it is a poison. You have no idea how your body is going to react. And if you overdo it, and you have no idea if and when and how you're going to overdo it, because once you become drunk, you lost your ability to think correctly. You're going to just keep consuming. Alcohol poisoning. Dying on their own vomit. About 4,000 drivers a year are killed. About 4,000 drivers are killed each year with drugs in their system. That's huge. And this doesn't count those who had drugs in their system without test results, or those killed by drivers with drugs in their system. That's just the driver themselves who has been tested and it has been found. 4,000. I mean, I know that, especially even if you watch in movies, right? One of the biggest things that's always being promoted is that, oh, the earth is overpopulated. And if we don't cut down on these numbers, if Thanos doesn't come and snap his finger and get rid of, 50% or 70% of the earth's population, the earth is going to die and we're all going to lead this most horrific death. Subhanallah. So it almost seems as if sometimes, call it a conspiracy theory if you want, as though they want people to die. Drugs other than alcohol are involved in about 18% of motor vehicle driver deaths. Drugs, not including alcohol. 20% basically. Do you think that if shaitan, Allah save us from him, that he's going to cause our brothers or sisters to drink alcohol, do you think he's not going to tell them to get behind the wheel and drive? Look, man, I've come from a background where I wasn't Muslim and I didn't practice Islam and I saw things and things of that sort. I've noticed that when people are drunk, you have to fight them to get the keys out of their hand because they believe they're not drunk, they're perfectly fine. And if somebody's high, it doesn't make much difference. Youth who start drinking before age 15 are 6 times more likely to develop alcohol dependence or abuse later in life than those who began to drink at or after the age of 21. So the younger they're exposed, the worse off it is for them. So what is the solution? And we're finishing here. What is the solution? The solution from the Islamic standpoint, number one, is prevention, because prevention cannot be beaten. To not involve yourself with drugs or anything that's going to bring you close to drugs, فَاجْتَنِبُوا, stay as far away from them as you can. Distance yourself from them and from the people that are around them and from the environment that they are used. Keep yourself as clear and far away as possible. Why? Because to prevent yourself from having to have anything to do with them is much easier than to deal with addiction. What's the other thing? We need to educate ourselves. And this is where we as a community need to be pushing for education. We need to be pushing the masjid to have programs. We need to be pushing the school to have programs. And in educating ourselves, we need to then be able to look out for some of the signs within what's happening in our homes. And I'll say this too. There should be no privacy in the home. Children have no privacy with regards to their parents. And I'm not saying this because parents should be tyrants. No, not at all. It doesn't mean that during the times of the awrat of what Allah says in the Quran, that there are 3 times of privacy, which are before Fajr, at the time of noon, and after Isha prayer, after the night, when people are going to undress and stuff, that you go in and you catch them naked or who knows what. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that with regards to cell phones, all of us should have access to what our kids have, and even our spouses, of passwords and so on. The computers, the rooms, the car. There should be nothing that is off limits. Why? Because there should be nothing that we're hiding. And if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to be worried about. And then, if and when the situation is there that a person may be using drugs, get help immediately. Don't delay. And don't be more worried about the people finding out than getting the help that's needed for yourself or for whoever your loved one is. Because for Muslims, all too often, unfortunately, we're still dictated by what if the people find out. We're worried and afraid that the people find out, as opposed to helping this person to get their life around, to get things better. And you don't have to go to the Muslim to get the help. If you're worried that if I go to the Muslim doctor and he's going to tell everybody or she's going to tell everybody, number one, they shouldn't. Shame on them if they do. Or the psychiatrist or the psychologist or the counselor. They have all taken oaths of privacy. Even ourselves as imams, we are not going to be telling the jama'ah. We are not exposing who's doing what. Get the help that is needed. Treat it as you would 4th stage cancer. That it is literally that serious. And if you don't, it is life and death. And to remind my brothers and sisters who may be using it, and even worse, selling it, fear Allah. Fear Allah and stop. Especially the men, because you are not only ruining yourself, but you are ruining your women. You are ruining your sisters if you don't think they know what you're doing. You are ruining your wives if you don't think they know what you're doing. You are ruining your daughters if you don't think they know what you are doing. You are literally destroying our families, our ummah. There is no tolerance for the drug dealing. And if these ahadith of what I'm finishing with are not going to scare you to stop immediately, then I have no idea what will. And Allah save you and us from a bad ending, because that's the only other thing I can think of. This hadith that's in Sahih al-Jami', Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhuma said that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, كل مسكر خمر وكل مسكر حرام ومن شرب الخمر في الدنيا فمات وهو لم يتب لم يشربها في الآخرة. Every intoxicant is khamr, and every intoxicant is prohibited. And whoever consumes it in this world and does not repent before they die, they will have nothing of any of the enjoyments of what they're going to be in paradise. So you think about this life, you need to put it into perspective with regards to the next, because whatever you may be feeling of some happiness or enjoyment or getting of benefits, it is short-lived, whereas in Jannah, in paradise and the hereafter, it is eternal. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu tells us that Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam said, "Man laqiya Allah mudmina khamrin, laqiyahu ka'abidi wathan." This hadith that's in Sahih al-Targhib wa Tarhib, we're told that whoever meets Allah Azza wa Jal addicted to intoxicants, alcohol or drugs, they will meet Allah Azza wa Jal as an idol worshipper. And if you're going to meet Allah Azza wa Jal as a polytheist, as an idolater, you better understand that it only gets worse from there. And this hadith, Abu Musa radiallahu anhu tells us that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, لا يدخل الجنة مدمن خمر ولا مؤمن بسحر ولا قاطع رحم وفي سيادة ولا مكذب بقدر. This hadith that's in a silsilat sahiha, the Prophet ﷺ said, these categories of people will not enter paradise. So if they're not going to enter paradise, then naturally they are going to enter hell. And Allah Azza wa Jal save us from hell. It is the person that is addicted to whatever the substance may be, alcohol, drugs. Number two, a person who believes in, therefore they practice magic. Number three, the person that disowns their family, that cuts themselves off and severs ties with them. And the fourth are those who disbelieve in Allah Azza wa Jal's divine decree. All four of these will not enter into paradise. And with that we conclude what I have to present. And we'll open up the floor to any questions that you may have. And if there's anybody here who knows how to use the Facebook thing and look at questions that anyone wants to ask through Facebook, you can then please share them with me, inshallah. Any questions? Yes?
My question is regarding the
Hookah.
Yes. When we see like most of the Muslim families, they use as less, like it's not like alcohol or something, it's like they use like entertainment. So what is regarding that? Because it's not, makes you intoxicate like alcohol, for sure it's addictive.
So the question is about hookah or shisha, or I don't know what other names it may have with regards to the different languages that people use. But that is when people take these different types of fancy looking bongs or whatever the names for them are, hookahs, and they'll put different types of tobacco with water and who knows what that they will smoke, and they do this, quote, for entertainment. Scholars, for the most part, are all of the majority opinion that tobacco and its products are haram. Now, one of the misconceptions that exist and the problems that there are with regards to some Muslims is they say, no. The ulama say it's makruh. Makruh is something of a word that scholars will use to not face the severity of what haram means, because that's a very serious word. because they understand what it means to stand before Allah on Judgment Day to give that verdict. So they'll use the word makruh in the same capacity, but with a little bit of a semantics in the word change. It isn't something that Muslims should be doing. Not men, not women. And I'll be honest, it is an ugly sight when you see a bearded dude, a Muslim looking guy sitting there at some restaurant or cafe, or that you see some beautiful sister with a hijab and whatnot. Are you kidding me? There's nothing else you can entertain yourself with than to sit there and puff away? There's no difference between the hookah, the cigarettes, the snuff of chewing tobacco, or the other stuff that they mix of tobacco within these leaves that come from like some different countries, and then they keep that in their mouth, or the ghat as they call it in certain other countries, of different types of herbal things that they keep in their mouth and they suck on it to kind of... It is addicting. Nobody will say that tobacco products aren't addicting. It's addicting. Number two, it has several health issues. You read on the cigarette boxes, it tells you that it causes cancer, it kills you, it produces this and causes that and all sorts of stuff. Three, it is wasting your money. When you think about how much money people spend on hookah, on cigarettes, wallahi, there are children in our own backyard here. I'm not talking about Syria, Yemen, here, Dallas, that they don't have food to eat. All of these are clearly reasons not to in addition to mention the stench, especially with regards to cigarettes and the tobacco, of things of that sort. All of these are clearly reasons to say that this is something, and to understand that this is something that is prohibited. Don't do it. Period. Any other questions?
Yeah. I guess some states have legalized marijuana for like medicinal purposes. Is there any ruling or...
Great question. Some states have legalized marijuana for medicinal purposes. What's the Islamic ruling? So the Islamic ruling with regards to that which is prescribed by the specialist is that, number one, the specialist should be a Muslim. Why? Because our priorities and values may not necessarily be the same. Right? If it is that a Muslim doctor, and I don't mean Muslim just that they were born to a Muslim family, but that they understand what our religion teaches us, and what they are doing is looking at options and alternatives in the way that how they are going to treat you so that you can overcome whatever your issue is. If in the end the American Medical Association or whatever else it is comes to this decision of saying that this particular agent within marijuana or whatever the case is something that has a very specific usage within medicine, then in that case, if it's prescribed correctly, legitimately, appropriately, it would be used. In the same way that morphine is used as a painkiller with regards to different things within medicine. But it has to be prescribed and managed correctly, because part of the biggest problem we're seeing today is the abuse within the medical community with regards to opioids, right? With regards to over-the-counter prescription drugs. And I hear this from some brothers where they've gone to a doctor and literally the doctor's saying to themselves like, you know, you look like you're anxious, you look like you're depressed. How about I prescribe methylzazine for you? It's like, I'm okay, I don't need any of that, so I'm not depressed, I'm not anxious or whatever case is. Some of these doctors are literally pushing pills. And this is where it's a crime. And this is where the FBI, CIA, and Homeland Security, and NASA, whoever it is, everybody needs to see what the heck is going on, because they're supposed to be helping us with our health, not supposed to be further exacerbating what there are of addictions and problems, and Allah knows best. Go.
Online questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So one is, what are some resources for the community locally, or anything that you know of that people can access for help?
For help?
Yeah, in terms of, counselors or...
So what are things that the community can access for help? There are several things. We are, alhamdulillah, blessed with so many Muslim doctors. Talk to them. Even if you're not going to go to their office, and you see them in the masjid or if they live in your neighborhood, talk to them. They can help you, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. We are, alhamdulillah, having an increase of Muslim mental health experts, whether it be psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors. Talk to them. In addition, if you go online, the fire department, the police department, they also have contacts, help, things of that sort. Talk to your imam. Talk to your imam and let him know what you're struggling with, what you're going through, so that he can be something also of a portal to kind of direct you to different things of making connections happen. Online, if you look up some stuff, type in whatever it is that you're struggling with. When we had talked about alcohol, there was Al-Anon, al-anon.org, as well as aa.org. They also have links and help with regards to addictions as a whole. And Allah knows best. Yeah.
How should a parent approach the child or kid?
How should the parent approach the child? Very carefully, lovingly. If you think your child may be using drugs or alcohol, you want to go about it correctly. You don't want to go in accusing and insinuating. You want to talk with them. You want to try to be understanding. Try to do it privately, not in front of the whole family, at dinner time. And you want to continuously convey that you love them, and all you want is to help them, so that if there is something that's happening, are they struggling with bullying or who knows what, and therefore they're doing something and who knows, that there's a better way. And if they can open up to you, alhamdulillah. If you don't feel that that's the case, to even extend to them the conversation saying, look, and if you don't necessarily feel, but don't say it right away, wait, let's see if they respond to you. But if they say, no, I'm not doing any of that, no way, astaghfirullah, a'udhu billah, right, the typical Muslim response to evade things, astaghfirullah, say to them, you could always talk to your mother, to your father, whoever it is. Or if you feel more comfortable, you can speak to the imam, you can speak to one of your, You don't want to give them only one person of an option. To let them know that there are others that they should trust, that they can turn to. But if and when your concern is actually something that you may feel is valid, that's when you're then going to want to, maybe not in the same setting, maybe wait a little bit, but you're going to want to bring up some of those things and say, well, you know what, I was educated on some of these different things, and here's why I'm asking, because part of the symptoms that I had read about mentioned X, and I think I'm observing X with regards to you. So can you help me so that I can not have that fear and concern? Is that the case? Or, talk to me. And see where it goes from there. And Allah knows best.
And the parents have to be on the same page. Because if one parent is in denial, then
Yes. That was so precious. Parents have to be on the same page. If mother and father, if husband and wife are not going to be both, not just on the same page, but we don't want good cop, bad cop. We want them both to be the same in their love and their concern and in their self-control. Because part of it is this, and I didn't mention this, reasons why. Sometimes it's because of abuse that people start taking to alcohol and drugs. It could be mental abuse, it could be physical abuse, it could be sexual abuse. And if that's something that has taken place, naturally it is not difficult for that person to disclose those things in public, to tell anybody, their parents, because it could be sometimes that it's happened from a close family member. Therefore, you want to make sure that you are not going to further cause them to become withdrawn and to not trust you. And Allah knows best. Yes?
How to combat face peer pressure when you're about to get into it?
how to combat or face peer pressure when you're going to give into it, about to give into it, you should be asking Allah Azza wa. Firstly, don't be there. Get out of it. Don't go there in the first place. Especially if you know that you have a hard time saying no. Somebody's cut, hey, we're going to hang out to, I can't, don't go. But if for however reason you found yourself in that predicament and it's like you can't get away, make dua, ask Allah Azza wa Jal to save you. And if you still feel like, oh my God, no, just get up and run out. Forget about what the people are going to say that, oh my God, look at them, they're crazy, they ran out. No, get up and run out. Get up and run out. Save yourself. That's how serious it is. They can say whatever they want about you afterwards. They can say whatever they want. But you did the right thing. Yeah.
How do you reach out to someone who is abusing drugs, but they are just a frequent acquaintance, but you know they are a Muslim and are aware that they have an addiction?
How do you reach out to somebody who you know is using drugs, that is addicted, but they're an acquaintance? You don't know them that well. You may want to check to see if there's somebody in the middle that you know well, that knows them well, and kind of get them involved. Because again, if you don't really know somebody, they may just easily brush you off and who knows what of stuff. Relationships matter. Relationships matter. When somebody you know and they know you, when there's respect, there's rapport, there's love, it makes all the difference. But if you don't know, that's a good question. Maybe you want to take the chance if there's nobody in that case and just approach the person themselves and again, take the same approach of being respectful and not necessarily accusing, but asking and inquiring and letting them know that you want to help. Yeah, and Allah knows best. And that's the last of the questions. And with that, alhamdulillah, if there's no other question, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Going once, going twice. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wasallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. We'll close with a dua. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbil Alameen. In this blessed day of Ramadan, Ya Allah, within your house, we ask you, Ya Allah, for anyone and everyone, young or old, male or female, Muslim, non-Muslim, Ya Allah, that you prevent them from getting involved with anything of tobacco, alcohol, drugs. Ya Allah, we ask you that you keep away from them those bad influences of people and otherwise that are going to otherwise harm them through those substances. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbil Alameen, we ask you that you protect them from anything and everything of those things that are going to ruin for them their lives and the lives of those who love them. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, for those who are unfortunately using them, Ya Allah, that you help them to stop, to realize how serious and how dangerous they are, that they make those lifestyle changes now, immediately, and that you grant them the strength, and you grant them the guidance, and you grant them the health to be able to do that and to maintain it. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, as a whole, for anyone who is addicted, Ya Allah, that they immediately take the steps that are needed to get the help that is needed to stop, to save themselves. Ya Allah, we ask you that you answer our prayers and the prayers of all of your servants with regards to their loved ones and these horrible substances. Allahumma ameen. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم وإياكم.